Welcome back, everybody, to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. And I am joined, as I most frequently am for these listener Q&As, by my colleague, Shannon Vasconcelos. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Beth. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So for those of you who are new to the show, Shannon is a former financial aid officer at both BU and Tufts. And Shannon is usually the guest when we do listener Q&A. I just want to put a plug in to people for actually submitting questions. Probably the easiest way, quite honestly, is for you to just send us a question. You can message us on Facebook. You can post it right on our Facebook page. You could post a question on our Instagram. You could even put it on LinkedIn if you were so inclined. We are on all of those social media platforms. You could put it on my Instagram, which is Elizabeth Heaton. So any number of ways to get that to us. You could also send us an email, gettingin.voiceamerica@gmail.com. I think the others are just a little easier because you don't have to remember the address. You could just
Right.
follow us and then you could send it in.
The other option is there's a form on our website to getintocollege.com, and you can just fill out the form. That's another quick and easy way to get it to us.
Very good point. So lots of ways for you to get us your questions, and we're getting to the end of the questions that we've gotten from listeners. So bring them on. We do this at least once a month. So we'd love to answer the burning questions that you have. And speaking of burning questions, Shannon, and actually I believe this comes to us from our website, from Kathy, who asks, or who says, "Hi, I love," in all caps, your show. Thank you, Kathy. I love that you love it. Please review us on Apple Podcasts. And have learned so much. The episode about spending college savings made me wonder, if you have a 529 and a Coverdell savings account, is one better to spend first? Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I would say for most people, it's probably not a big deal in which order you spend them. They are, to take a step back, they are very similar accounts. They both give you a tax break for saving for college. You get the earnings of both accounts tax-free as long as you use the money for college. They both have a penalty of 10% of the earnings and taxation if you don't use the money for college. There's a number of differences in terms of who can contribute, the amounts you can contribute, the investments you can hold in the accounts. But for the purposes of this question, I think that the biggest difference between the accounts is that 529s can stay open indefinitely, whereas Coverdell accounts expire when the beneficiary of the account turns 30. So and again, for most people, this is not an issue because even between the two types of accounts that they might have, they probably don't have enough to totally pay for college. That's the case with the vast majority of folks. So as long as they're both going to get spent up on college, there is no issue. But if you are possibly going to have too much, air quotes, money saved for college where you can't spend it all on college, the Coverdell might be the better first one to spend because it has that age limit. If the account is not spent by the time the beneficiary turns 30, that account is liquidated, given to the beneficiary. And if it is not liquidated for college use, if the beneficiary has to pay taxes on it plus a 10% penalty. Whereas with the 529, if it's not used immediately for college, it can just stay open. If your child decides to go to college or to grad school 20 years down the line, they can use it then. If you want to change the beneficiary of the account to somebody else in the family, a younger sibling, or even the child of the original beneficiary, so your grandchildren, you can just change the beneficiary and use the 529 for them. So because the 529 has that little extra flexibility, I think if I were you, I'd probably spend down the Coverdell first, just because it does have that age limit.
Love it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
The first question for you comes in from Naomi, and Naomi asks, "We just saw that the Common App will be available as of August 1st. My daughter wants to start submitting applications that first week of August, but her school counselor isn't available to assist with that," which I imagine is quite common. They haven't gone back to school yet.
Yes.
What should she do?
Well, obviously, I don't know all of the particulars here, and I'm not sure where your daughter is going to be applying to college. I think the first thing that I would say is that even for schools practicing rolling admissions, typically speaking, so long as you get your application in by maybe October would be, at a school where the applications are flooding in, quite honestly, by November is probably still okay, but I would shoot for October for rolling admission schools. You're totally fine. And if the school has an application deadline that is November 1, December 1, January 1, February 15th, truly, there is not a whole lot to be gained by rushing to get your application in. That said, your daughter can certainly submit her parts and then the school can submit their parts later, but understand that it's really going to go into a holding bin and nothing's going to happen to it. I want to make a plea to appreciate and understand where school counselors are coming from. They are also trying to take a summer vacation. They might make themselves available during their summer vacation, but this is not something you should ask them to make themselves available for. It might feel like it's urgent and the application is open and therefore I need to start submitting, but the reality is that it is not. It can wait. At most schools, they're not going to be ready to start submitting things like transcripts or assisting with letters of recommendation or any of that for at least a few weeks once you get back to school. So I would say that realistically, and school counselors who are listening, I hope that I am representing you well here. Realistically, I think, mid-September is the absolute earliest that you probably could expect them to have their pieces ready, and probably, honestly, more realistically, the end of September, early October. Again, there might be a school where this is truly of the essence. I don't know what that school is. So off the top of my head, I don't know what that school is. So really what I would encourage is that your daughter absolutely fill out the application once it's available. Maybe make sure that it's all exactly the way that she would like it to be. Work a little bit more on that essay if that's not quite done. There are generally things that you could be doing to improve the application so that once you're back to school and in the swing of things and your school counselor is, ready to help you, then you can have your pieces ready, and that makes the school counselors' lives easier as well because now you're not dragging your feet. But I mostly just kind of want to say, chill a little bit on this one.
Right.
But I do love the enthusiasm, and I probably, honestly, I take it over the student who is dragging their feet and not doing anything, and
Right.
deadlines are approaching and they've still done nothing, right?
Exactly. Yes. And there's plenty, like you said, there's plenty she can be working on her end, the submission part, and anything that the school counselor needs to do is not an emergency at this point.
Exactly. For those of you who are listening and your child is not a senior or you are not a senior, you still have a year left. One really important thing that I would be doing during your junior year is understanding what the school policies are, how far in advance you need to let them know where you are applying, what the process is for them to submit your materials, which of your materials they actually take care of submitting. So most schools do submit the transcript on your behalf and usually a counselor recommendation if that's a requirement. Some schools will also gather the teacher recommendations and submit them for you. In lots of other places, the teachers will be responsible for their individual submissions there. And the best thing you can do is really understand how that's going to work at your school, so that when you come back from your summer break, you know what to expect, you know what deadlines you need to hit, and you're going to do your part to make your school counselor's life easier and therefore make your life easier because everything's going to happen in the time frame that you need it to. All right.
Yes. Additional plug to have some grace with your school counselor.
Yes.
As you're worried about, your one college application, they are likely having to worry about hundreds of applications potentially. So give them a little grace and have some patience.
Exactly. I would agree with that. And know that at many schools, and certainly not all, but at many schools, there is a grace period whereby you need to have your stuff in by the application deadline, but there can often be a week or two, sometimes even a little bit more, grace period where the other pieces of the application, the transcript, the letter of recommendation, things like that, can arrive a little after the deadline. So understand that that is not at all schools, but at many schools.
Awesome.
All right. Shannon, aid and scholarships are really important to us, but there's so much to focus on with the application process that we're going to focus on finalizing the list and getting applications out the door before we deal with financial aid or scholarship stuff. That's fine, right?
No, it is not. And when I saw this question, I thought so often our answers are very nuanced and it depends. It might work for somebody and not for others. This is just a flat out no. It is not fine. I guess if I tried to find a way, it would depend. If you're just independently wealthy and the money doesn't matter at all to you, you're willing to pay whatever it costs, then fine. But this person has said that is not the case. The finances are important to them. So no, you want to be incorporating your concerns about the finances right from the beginning of your college search. It is no use getting into a college if you can't afford to pay for that college. So I would say any school that you are interested in, a good first step is to run the net price calculator on that school's website. Those calculators exist to help you estimate need-based financial aid eligibility well before you even applying. So that's a great first step to take to figure out, is this school in my price range or not? That can drive whether or not that school ends up on your list. The net price calculators that every college has on their website are required to estimate need-based aid eligibility in advance. The best ones also incorporate merit scholarships into their calculators. That way, those good calculators, you really have a good kind of all-in estimate of what that school will cost you. If the schools don't incorporate merit scholarships, then what you need to think about is schools use merit scholarships as a recruitment tool. They're going to offer scholarships to the students that stand out the most in their applicant pool. So in order to maximize merit scholarships, you need to apply to some schools where you are going to stand out, where you're going to be unique, where you're going to be above average. Those are going to be the schools that are most likely to offer you scholarships. So you want to make sure when you're designing that list of schools you're going to apply to, you want to have some of those, what we would often call safety schools, on that list. So again, the finances are coming into your thought process right from the beginning when you're deciding where to apply. At least they should be, if you're really worried about the finances, which most of us are. And then the only other point I would make is you're thinking about the finances when you're designing your list, and then another step is to actually submit financial aid applications. And one, I don't think this is the case with the person that submitted the question, but sort of a common mistake people make is they wait till they have heard they have been accepted to a college to submit financial aid applications. Again, under the theory, we'll worry about that later.
Yes.
That you should not do that. Colleges can have financial aid application deadlines, if not the same day as their admissions application deadline. Sometimes they follow very shortly thereafter. Funding can be limited at schools and they run out of money. So again, another thing to keep track of right from the beginning, what are the financial aid application deadlines, and make sure you get those applications in well in advance of those deadlines to make sure that schools are still at their most generous points. They still have lots of money to award.
Yes. And the only thing I would add is that when you think about families who get themselves into a lot of trouble financially paying for college, I swear it starts by getting into a school that you can't afford, right?
Yeah.
So if you knew that you couldn't afford it, then you could have not had the student apply, and then you could have avoided that altogether. So please don't leave it. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have a couple more questions that we're going to try to get to, so don't go away.